Stop acting so high and mighty over a few $1,000s. You're only living comfortably because of my son. Gary's mother snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. She turned to Gary, a bitter smile twisting her lips. Gary, why don't you just stop taking care of this ungrateful wife? I'm tired of Zoe always complaining, acting as if she's better than everyone else. You could easily find a younger, more wonderful wife than her. Gary gave a small, nonchalant smile, as if he didn't entirely disagree. If you're so unhappy, you can leave anytime, he said casually, glancing at me. The words hit like a punch, and for the first time, I felt the cold weight of being entirely alone in that house. Without a word, I retreated to the bedroom and cried in silence. The next day, however, something my boss said about Gary hit me like a revelation. It all suddenly made sense. If that's the case, I'll gladly divorce him, I thought, and from that moment on, I began preparing to do just that. My name is Zoe. Gary, my husband, first entered the circle of friends I belonged to when I was a third-year university student. He was a confident young man with an almost exaggerated sense of self-worth, clearly indulged by his parents. His natural charm helped him integrate into our group quickly, and he became well-liked by everyone. Back then, I barely had a chance to speak with him one-on-one, as I was busy with my job hunt and soon after graduation. The next time I saw Gary was 2 years later, when he came to interview for a sales position at my company. Zoe, it's Gary from the circle. He grinned when we bumped into each other. It seemed my company was his first choice, so he started contacting me frequently for advice on the position. After a few drinks and work-related discussions, we began dating. Gary landed the sales job, and soon enough, we were both working at the same company. Socially savvy, he expanded his network quickly and charmed his way into the good graces of his superiors. A year later, he proposed. I had a feeling we'd eventually marry, but what worried me was his mother. During our first meeting, it was clear she still doted on Gary. Oh, hello, mother-in-law. My name is Zoe, and I'm dating your son, I said nervously when I visited Gary's house for the first time. His mother didn't even bother with a smile. Zoe, you're 3 years older than Gary, aren't you? She asked, her voice flat. Yes, Gary is my junior in the circle, I replied. Don't bring that university nonsense into our house. Do you realize Gary is in a higher position than you now? She retorted sharply. Her disdain was clear. She didn't approve of Gary choosing an older woman as his wife, and while she never outright opposed our marriage, the coolness was palpable. Even after we married and settled into our life together, every visit to Gary's parents' house was marked by his mother's petty complaints. You still work after getting married? She'd ask, her tone dripping with judgment. Yes, with Gary's help, I managed to balance work and home life, I'd reply, trying to keep my tone steady. Help? You don't make Gary do household chores too, do you? She'd snap. We both work, I'd begin to explain. Even if you both work, you're just an office worker. Gary's in sales. There's a world of difference between being a star salesman and someone who just does office work, she would say. I'd look at Gary for support, but he would beam with pride when his mother praised him. Oblivious to the sting of her words aimed at me, it became clear that I couldn't rely on Gary to defend me, and I had no choice but to endure his mother's constant verbal jabs every time we visited. As time passed, Gary grew busier with work. He worked late, often through weekends, and we saw less and less of each other. Then, one day, while I was home alone, I received an unexpected letter. It was a debt collection notice. That evening, when Gary finally came home, I confronted him. Gary, there's something I need to talk to you about, I said, holding the letter up to him. He sighed, his annoyance evident. I told you I'm working overtime, just go to bed. Ignoring his irritation, I shoved the letter into his hands. This says you have debt, explain this to me. Gary's face drained of color as he read the letter. No, it's not what you think, it's for entertainment expenses, he stammered. Entertainment expenses? I repeated, raising an eyebrow in disbelief. Yeah, it's for work. I had an unexpected meeting with a client, and I didn't have any cash on me that day, he explained quickly. But don't you have a company card for this kind of thing? I asked, my skepticism growing. I forgot it at home, Gary muttered, his tone defensive. I had no choice but to borrow the money. I glanced at the debt notice, my stomach tightening. $7,000? Isn't that a little steep for entertainment expenses? I asked, perplexed. Gary shrugged, as if it was no big deal. I figured it was better to borrow it all at once rather than piece by piece. It's for business, so the company will reimburse me. Well, can you cover it with your savings until then? I asked, trying to stay calm but feeling increasingly frustrated. What? Why should I dip into my savings? Gary scoffed, looking genuinely puzzled. If we don't pay it back soon, we'll get hit with interest. Plus, we still need to save for the mortgage on this place, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't entirely convinced by his story, but I couldn't let the debt grow any larger, so, reluctantly, I transferred $7,000 from my own savings, the money I had been carefully setting aside since before we married, to cover his loan. Gary seemed to get the message, promising that he wouldn't go out for entertainment again. He even promised to stay home with me that weekend. By the way, Gary added casually, why don't we visit my mother? It's been a while. I wasn't thrilled by the idea, but I felt guilty for not seeing her sooner, especially with how busy Gary had been, so I agreed. When we arrived, his mother greeted Gary with obvious warmth, but when it came to me, she was as cold as ever. I stopped trying to win her approval long ago. Whenever she started to criticize me, I would quietly slip into the kitchen to busy myself with making tea. It was far easier than sitting there and absorbing her constant verbal jabs. As I returned to the living room with the tea, I froze when I overheard their conversation. Is your married life really going well, Gary? His mother asked, her voice dripping with a concern I had never heard before. You're not being bossed around by Zoe, are you? Gary responded with a smug tone. Of course not. Zoe does whatever I say when it comes to housework and money. She even hands over her savings whenever I need it. I couldn't believe my ears. Was he referring to the debt I covered for him? Gary continued, proudly. If there's anything you want, just say the word. Zoe still has plenty of savings left, so she'll buy you whatever you want. His mother laughed, clearly pleased. Well, thanks to you, an old woman like me managed to get her married off, so she should be grateful and give something in return. I couldn't take it any longer. Enough, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. Both of them turned, startled by my outburst. That savings isn't just pocket change, I continued, trying to keep my composure. It's money I've been saving for our future, before we even got married, and what I gave Gary wasn't a gift. We agreed that he'd borrow it, and he'd pay me back once the company reimburses him. Gary, desperate to defend himself, added, well, when it gets reimbursed, why don't you buy something nice for my mother? You've ignored her for so long. As my wife, you should show her some appreciation. His mother nodded, clearly pleased with this suggestion. Gary is such a thoughtful son. Zoe, on the other hand, is a miserly wife who can't even buy her family a little gift. Hold on a second, I shot back. If it were just a small gift, I'd be happy to buy something, but we're talking about $7,000. That's not a small amount of money. Gary's mother shot me an icy glare, her displeasure obvious. Don't act so superior over a few thousand. You get to live comfortably because of my son. Then, turning to Gary, she added with a scornful look, Gary, maybe it's time you stop taking care of this trashy wife. I'm so tired of Zoe, always complaining. Gary chuckled, as if the idea didn't bother him in the slightest. You could find someone younger and more obedient, he added with a dismissive laugh. Yeah, maybe I should have married someone younger and cuter, he said casually, then turned to me, his tone flat. You can leave whenever you want. It hit me then, there was no one on my side in this house. Without saying another word, I retreated to the bedroom and locked myself in, tears flowing freely. Gary, oblivious to my distress, sat with his mother in the living room, drinking the tea I'd made, chatting with her until she finally left. The next day, I trudged into work feeling drained. My boss noticed immediately. Zoe, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself, he asked, his concern clear. I tried to brush it off. Oh, it's just some trouble at home, I murmured, not wanting to go into details. If you'd like to talk about it, I'm here, he said gently. After a brief hesitation, I found myself telling him everything, the debt, the constant criticism, and Gary's behavior. He listened intently before speaking slowly. It's about Gary, isn't it? I nodded, feeling my stomach churn. What about him? I asked. My boss took a breath, looking thoughtful. I never imagined Gary would become infamous at the company for something like this. I was stunned. His words only solidified what I already knew. I was done with Gary. A week later, while I was on paid leave, Gary's mother arrived at the house, luggage in hand. The moment she saw me, her expression hardened. Oh, you're still here? She said coldly. I thought you'd be gone by now. From now on, I'll take care of Gary, so you should leave. You're going to take care of him? Are you planning to live here? I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. Yes, until our house is finished, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Finished? I repeated, baffled. If you divorce Gary, he'll be coming back to live with us, she explained smugly. We decided to renovate the house. It's being demolished today to make it more comfortable for Gary and me. It was as if she had already decided that Gary and I were done, and honestly, with the way things were going, she wasn't entirely wrong. But I never imagined they'd go this far, renovating just to have Gary back under their roof. But isn't that going to be expensive? Didn't you say there wasn't much left from your father-in-law? I asked, surprised by the sudden decision. Oh, that's fine, she replied confidently. Once we don't need your help anymore, Gary's salary will cover the renovation costs. I raised an eyebrow. Gary's salary? She sneered. Didn't I tell you there's a big difference between what you earn as an office worker and what Gary earns as a rising star in sales? If you're so self-aware of how much of a burden you are, then leave already. I couldn't hold back my laughter. She glared at me, clearly irritated. What's so funny? I smirked, still chuckling. Gary is going to be fired soon. What? She screeched, her face turning pale. He used the $7,000 he borrowed from me for entertainment expenses, I explained calmly, but apparently, it was really for something else, dating another woman. Her grip tightened on my arm, panic seeping into her voice. Zoe, why are you working at the same company as Gary? This is the time for couples to support each other. Tell the president to withdraw the dismissal. I pulled my arm away, incredulous. A couple? Weren't you just telling me to leave Gary and get out of here? Now you want me to help him? I shot back, my anger flaring. Her expression shifted, her tone venomous. So you're just going to abandon him when he loses his job? I met her gaze without flinching. Gary is the one who lacks compassion. He's been cheating on me the whole time. My boss told me that several employees have seen him out with another woman during work hours. The money he took from me was for dates with his mistress. I paused, my decision final. I'm divorcing Gary, not because of his job loss, but because he's been betraying me all along. I can't stay married to someone like that. Her face fell, and she fell silent, unable to defend her son anymore. Without saying another word, I packed my things and left. That night, Gary called me after returning home. Zoe, is it true that you left? His voice was a mix of disbelief and panic. Yes, I replied coldly. Didn't your mother tell you? All she said was, Zoe left, and then she fell ill. Gary responded, his voice filled with concern. What happened? Please come back right away, he begged. What are you talking about? I scoffed. You were the one who told me to leave. I didn't mean it seriously, he protested, his voice softening. I thought you wouldn't actually leave me. I can't live with you anymore, I said firmly, my resolve unwavering. Stop being so stubborn, Gary snapped. How long are you going to sulk about this? My anger flared. It's you who needs to stop being stubborn. I know everything. There was a long, tense silence before Gary spoke again, his voice shaky. What do you know? You've been cheating on me, I said bluntly, and the $7,000 debt you borrowed from me? You used it for dates with your mistress, didn't you? Gary stammered, clearly flustered. What? Why would you say that? My boss told me everything, I replied coldly. Several employees saw you out with your mistress during work hours. You can't deny it. I'm filing for divorce, Gary, and I'm not changing my mind. I calmly laid out the terms. First, you'll pay me back the $7,000 I lent you, and I'll also be seeking compensation for emotional distress. Gary's panic was evident. Wait, hold on, I couldn't even pay off my debt, so I don't have that kind of money. I don't care about your situation, I said, my voice firm. My demands won't change. Zoe, please reconsider, Gary pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. You were happy to marry someone younger and more popular like me, right? Let's not divorce. We can still help each other as husband and wife, he suggested. I don't think there's anything you can do for me anymore, I replied. Why not? He asked, his voice cracking. We've been living comfortably because of our combined income. Your debt ruined everything, and we won't be working together anymore, I told him bluntly. You're fired, I added, the finality of my words hanging in the air. Fired? Gary asked, still not grasping the severity of the situation. Your coworkers have been talking. They've noticed how you've been all talk and no action. They're aware of your carelessness with important tasks and your fraudulent expense claims. Gary, you were only popular at first because you were friendly with everyone, but now there's nothing of value in you, either for the company or me. I hung up without another word. Gary kept calling, leaving desperate messages on my answering machine, begging me to come back, to try again, but I ignored him. After a few days, I blocked his number. I moved forward with the legal procedures, including property division. With the help of a lawyer, we agreed to sell the house we had lived in for the division, but it sold for much less than expected. The remaining loan still needed to be paid, and although I had to take on that burden, the $7,000 I got back and the emotional distress compensation helped me manage. As for Gary, after being fired and with no prospects for future income, he had no way to pay off his debts. He was forced to declare bankruptcy. Without money to pay for his parents' house renovation, they had no choice but to sell it, losing their home in the process. Gary and his mother struggled without income, eventually finding jobs at an inn where they were allowed to live, but Gary's salary alone wasn't enough, so his mother had to take on physical labor. She quickly became exhausted, and Gary, who had relied on his charm and friendly nature, found himself useless and ridiculed by younger staff members. Meanwhile, I poured myself into my work, using the shock of my divorce as fuel to push forward. My boss took notice of my dedication and rewarded me with a promotion and a significant raise. We began going out for drinks more often, and he was always there to support me in the aftermath of my divorce. Recently, he confessed that he wanted to date me. Unlike Gary, who had proven to be unreliable, my boss was someone I could rely on. With that thought, I began to believe that maybe, finally, I had found a trustworthy partner. I allowed myself to hope again.